Hello, everybody. It's Samuel from Home of Comics, and today I'll be discussing my role on the Home of Comics channel, and that is being the universe creator. So, for quite some time now, I've wondered what the MCU would look like if someone else had taken Kevin Feige's role, architecting a Marvel Cinematic Universe from the get-go that would look different from the one now. But beyond that, I've wondered what the Marvel Universe would look like if I specifically got the chance to design an entire arc over the course of several phases, with access to all the characters and no limitations on budget, which means the opportunities are endless. I want to structure this universe similarly to the way the MCU handled phases, but instead of splitting a large arc into three phases, like the MCU seems to be doing so far, I'm just going to have each major arc be a chapter, more akin to how James Gunn has announced his initial slate for the DCU. By doing this, I think there will be less limitations on how many movies or shows can be in a specific arc, and just that one arc can have ramifications for the next arc, so that we have sort of fluidity between arcs and that we're not just kind of skipping around. Not to say that I think the multiverse saga is a complete dismembering from the original MCU, but it does feel tonally quite different. And I want to keep a concurrent universe where each major arc is sort of road mapped into the next. So, and I've done the first two of those so far. I've mapped them out. We have specific chapter titles, specific villains that will be for each arc. So that is basically how this will be set up. For any other disclosure, I am not familiar with any of the realms of fan casting, so my input will be limited to projects and directors, specifically directors who I think would fit the project visually, or sort of more aesthetically pleasing, because I think comic book movies right now have a really bland, sort of brownish look. And so I think we can mood board a little bit of a feel for a film by including directors. So I hope you will tag along for that. And to do this first episode will be looking at the first project in the universe, the Wolverine. So the Wolverine is going to be directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa, and we'll get to that in a second. But my thoughts for the first film of this universe is to rock one of Marvel's biggest heroes, arguably their 1B, Wolverine. So when I initially struck up the idea for this film, I knew I wanted it to take place in Japan, like James Mangold, but I also wanted to tone it up a notch, clearly having it influenced by older Ronin films such as classic Kurosawa, but more specifically something like Lady Snowblood or A Touch of Zen by King Hu, which are dripping with their sort of, Ronin visual aesthetics. They look very unique. And so when I came to this idea, I decided Kiyoshi Kurosawa, he's a Japanese horror director, would be the right guy to pen the film. There were other possible candidates that I thought about, such as Yoji Yamada and Takashi Miike, but ultimately I landed on Kiyoshi Kurosawa, whose upcoming film, The Samurai and the Prisoner, debuts later this year, and which looks quite fantastic. Though both Mike and Kurosawa have a history with horror films in specific, I think Kurosawa's quieter psychological obsession with dread will work better with how I want to take this film, as a sort of classic Ronin film, which was a major inspiration for Logan in the first place, but also a sense of psychological, sort of grief-striven guilt that Logan feels having a sort of tragic past. So I think Kurosawa is the right director for this case. So this film would start on Attu Island, Alaska, 1958, with Logan, Mystique, Emma Frost, Sabretooth, Bishop, and Magic trapped in a mutant holding zone for CIA science experiments. Because of the harsh weather conditions of the island, an earthquake in the middle of the worst blizzard in the island's history will cause a complete power outage, giving the units an opportunity to shake their suppression sensors and make an escape for the island's cargo boat. Having successfully worked their way out of the prison and away from the guards, the mutants hijack the boat and make way for the nearest point of habitable land, Japan, which is around 650 miles away, and they can't step foot in the USSR. The mutants eventually find their way on Japan's mainland, crashing the port of Nemuro. With this, the screen cuts to black in the open 5 years later. Ataru, 1963. Mutants are now a world-known phenomenon. Logan is a humble fisherman on the outskirts of the city, reclusive and still hard-nosed. After bringing home a fish for dinner, Logan turns on the radio. Kenji Oyama has assumed presidency in Japan, with voters tending to appreciate his view on eradicating mutants and eliminating the presence of samurai in the country. What we aren't immediately told is that Kenji Oyama's daughter, Yuriko, was a former partner of Logan's and a leader of the Yakuza organization, The Hand. This is how we get moving in this film. The Hand assumes power in Japan. This leads Logan to dial the number of Emma Frost, and she tells him that there's a boat leaving the country from Kagoshima in exactly a week, with intentions to arrive on an unsovereign island where mutants can create settlement. She tells Logan about the other, Bishop and Magic, who have intentions to make the way to the boat, but Mystique and Sabretooth are off-grid. Logan tells Emma that he will be there, but he has to get on a train because Logan is on the complete opposite end of Japan. And because of Yuriko and his former relationship, there are already bounty hunters looking for him by the time he arrives at the train station in Sapporo. So, Yuriko is not going to make it easy for Logan to leave the country, but Logan is going to get to a ferry. The part of Japan he's at, so he's in the northern part of Japan, so he needs to take a ferry to get to the mainland. So the first part of the trip is smooth. He sneaks on a ferry. He gets on. The presence of the hand shows up, but he is on this ferry. An announcement is made over the telecast to keep an eye out for Logan because they know where he is. They know a lot about him. So by the time Logan gets to the mainland, there are several ninjas who are beginning to find tricks and stumbles and looking for him. And Sabretooth comes down and recognizes Logan, and a battle ensues on the ferry between the ninjas and Sabretooth and Logan. So Logan is being overwhelmed, right? And then boom, Mystique comes in, and she was living near Sapporo as well because she split with Logan sort of recently. And I know this is a little bit tropey, but I think this is kind of how we're going to have to go. I think you kind of have to play it a little bit more safe in the first project, aside from aesthetics. But plot-wise, this one should be sort of a traditional superhero. I'm not going to try any experimentation. But anyways, they overwhelm Sabretooth and make their way onto the mainland. They discuss plans, and then Logan tells her about the boat. We learn about their past, such as Logan's emotional failures and eventual abandonment of Mystique after the announcement of her pregnancy, which she tells him she aborted after he left. Logan tries to reconcile with her, and while it is apparent that they still care for each other, it is clear that there is a hole perhaps too big for Logan to mend. So now they're on the train trying to make it from the top of the Japanese mainland to the absolute bottom. But the cabin door where Mystique and Logan are staying is suddenly ripped open by a huge set of claws, and Yuriko but by doing this, she shows Logan that she has now assumed sort of his power. And so Lady Deathstrike and Sabretooth begin an all-out assault on Mystique and Logan, and the two are split up into the forests of the Nagano province. So Sabretooth and Deathstroke are forced to split because the two head in opposite directions. So Deathstrike takes on Logan, and Sabretooth takes on Mystique. She does get away, but we don't actually see their fight. So what happens is we are just Logan versus Deathstrike, another former partner of his. That's going to be a sort of major theme going on here. But slashing her way at him, brutalizing him, beating him. Logan, that's typical, thinks about giving up, but musters the strength just to get away. Gets a claw on her face, gets away. Then we hit the second arc of this film. Ina Village, broken down and destroyed. Logan spends a lot of time knowing that even though he only has a week, he has to recover. So, the middle arc, as I have just said, he learns the way of the Bushido from a local villager and restores hope that he can not only reunite with Mystique and make it to the boat, but also reunite with all of his former colleagues. And he starts to maybe think about the possibility of emotional redemption, which might be hard to show visually, but I'm not, showing you a real movie, so you got to just go with me here. So while in Osaka, then he gets from Ina Village to Osaka, Logan gets word that magic is in Osaka, and he finds that she is preparing an old Korean War helicopter at the Osaka airport, which will arrive in Kumamoto, where she will take a train to meet Bishop and Emma at the port of Kagoshima. So he makes his way to Osaka airport after meeting her, but they are met by Sabretooth, who taunts Logan about Mystique. We know what happens. We know she escapes, but tries to get in his head. So we get an insane fight in the heart of the cherry blossom area of Osaka. I think that would be a really cool visual touch, sort of like not Brand New Day, Brave New World, but not so CGI, yuck, throw up. He trounces Sabretooth because of the Ina Village arc. Magic helps with her big, berserk-inspired sword, the Guts-inspired sword, and they arrive at the airport and they make it into the air. But about 30 minutes into the flight, they see another helicopter coming in from the distance, and it's Lady Deathstrike charging straight at them. Logan realized that if she has the same healing powers as him, she's willing to crash into the copter as a means of trying to take out the two. Logan tells Magic what he thinks she's planning on doing, but Deathstrike is moving at such a pace that it's too late for anyone to change course, and the helicopters smash into each other. Logan grabs Magic and wraps her around with his whole body, but as we know, Magic has her own powers, and she is able to phase through the trees as a means to break her and Logan's fall. Logan does take damage because the phase doesn't save him. And Magic now, knowing Deathstrike, who will take less damage because she parachuted out of the crash, is going to be hot on their tracks. So not only do the two now only have 50 hours to reach Kagoshima port without any direction, but Logan's healing is going to set them back considerably. So by piecing together how long it's been since she saw a body of water, Magic figures that they're in the Oita region, which means if she keeps going west, with luck she'll reach Aso. But the region is too mountainous for them to traverse. She realizes she needs to get to a coastal city, and then to Miyazaki as a means of course correction. But the journey is much further, and with Wolverine's strength will cost them time. She decides she'll leave Logan, draw out Deathstrike in the surrounding region, and do just enough to neutralize her so she can return and get Logan and herself a few steps ahead. The plan is executed, but Magic is stunted by Deathstrike's pure skill and is starting to be overcome, but Logan does show up, again a little bit tropey, still half wounded, and stabs Deathstrike in the head, rendering her completely ineffective as she spends time recovering. So they flee, and Logan explains his history with Deathstrike to Magic as she's confused to why they're such hot targets, hinting at, there might actually be a lot of mutants hiding in Japan. Why Wolverine? Why Magic? So they recover in the coast city of Nobioka and make their way to Kagoshima with just a few hours to spare. There they confront Deathstrike, Sabretooth, and the Hand one last time in the pouring rain. So Kagoshima is one of Japan's rainiest cities. It's Bishop, Emma, Magic, and Logan in hopefully the most visually satisfying samurai tribute-esque fight of the film. They begin to overcome Yuriko and Sabretooth, but Yuriko's father, so Deathstrike's father, arrives on the scene with his incredible swordsmanship. So what happens here is Wolverine then confronts Deathstrike and her father, and they begin a final confrontation while the others defeat Sabretooth and begin preparing the ship for takeoff. With the father and daughter's personal vendettas too strong for them to care about the other mutants, Logan is in a 1v2, and he's beginning to be overcome. And, you may think like, well, aren't the other mutants going to help them? Well, this is maybe a little bit less of a hero-ish world, and so there are things that might have to be sacrificed for them to work towards sovereignty. And so that might have to be considered. But anyway, he doesn't get overcome. He's getting destroyed, but Mystique arrives from the top of a building and shoots Kenji through the head, killing Yuriko's father. Deathstrike, caught off guard, completely devastated, turns and then is shot by Mystique as well through the chest, but she won't die. Instead, she'll become the president of Japan in her father's role. So that's another thing I want to do, have a political tension for several countries. What happens if this Marvel universe, it's actually villains running the major countries? What if it's Kingpin running the US or someone else running Russia, etc., etc.? So that's my sort of thinking by letting Yuriko become president of Japan and the Hand assuming complete power in Japan. So as this movie ends, Mystique flees into the night. Logan looks up in complete devastation. Now he loses Mystique because she's fleeing, and Deathstrike is, he doesn't know if she lived or not. And Mystique can't go with them because her decision to kill the president of Japan would make it exceptionally difficult for the X-Men to push to become a sovereign nation when they arrive on Genosha. And that's where this is going to go. They're going to get on the boat and make their way, and the X-Men will return in this universe's second project, Genosha, which is a fun 12-episode show where they're going to fight for sovereignty, establish friendships and connections, and probably introduce a few more X-Men. But my final thoughts in writing this project is that I really wanted to tribute samurai films, but also traditional Japanese philosophy, geography, and aesthetics that would perhaps be prevalent in the 60s, which is where this universe now starts for good. I know, again, I've said this, but it follows a mostly basic structure to other comic book movies, but I do think we have to play it a little bit safe for the first project in an extended, established universe. And I do think setting up the regional leaders will become a staple for this universe and will show that geopolitical tension is going to be one of the most massive parts of what happens between the characters. So I'm excited to tackle the 12-episode Genosha show in the next video, and then we will do we're going to do one season in that video, and then we're going to move on to the third project, and so forth. But for now, this is the X-Men arc, and this is what will happen. Thanks, all. This is Samiel from Home of Comics, and I'm signing off.